Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Laura Hanson with Connect My Brain. So we are in the middle of a series that I'm calling Dr. Hanson's Case Series, and I am sharing with you stories of different patients that I have worked with over the years, and I've been doing this for 27 years, and how we brought together this particular program, as well as you might hear something that's going to connect a dot for you, either for yourself, your child, or some loved one that you could share this information with. So how did I get into this? Well, about 27 years ago, when I opened my doors as a chiropractor, I literally had this one little girl in particular that every time she would come into the office and she would hear my voice, she would scream. And it literally made me scratch my head going, what is going on there? And now to be able to get close to the child, I had to whisper all the time. So back in my office, which I never let anybody into my office because it was just covered in books, I am always looking things up, wanting to know why would somebody be going through this? And these are the beginning days of what led me to look outside of only doing a chiropractic adjustment, but based on something that we call the subluxation complex. And this complex includes the muscle system, the movement system, neurology, histo, or the chemistry of the body. And then the fifth part is somebody may have a diagnosis, a label, a suspicion of something, or even a pathology. So you break it down and you begin to see what is the body doing. And as I've mentioned before, the sound system is something that when you come into this world, it's one way, but over the first 3 years of life, it's going to become everything it's supposed to be, hopefully. So you come into the world hearing low frequency sounds and you acquire middle and high over the first 3 years of life. And so anything that's going on in those first 3 years is going to be influencing each other's systems. So in this little person, I hadn't yet earned all the other credentials that I currently have, but I began to look at her from a different set of eyes. I began to go into her nervous system in the way that she could handle that it wouldn't tip her bucket. One of the things that has always been important to me is looking at stress. Stress is not just a word that we say, it's literally a physiological reaction. And especially in children, if that's what's going on all the time, those little people are getting dysregulated. And you know, we all have the same stuff up here in our brain, but it's all based on the experience that we go through as to how it's going to get wired up. And that experience is an internal experience and it's an external experience. So over the years, perfecting my initial insight brought me to the understanding, and 6, almost 7 credentials following my Doctor of Chiropractic, I now look at things very differently. I look at it completely mechanical about how you get wired up. We look at the chemistry through labs, and then we also do brain mapping, neuro and biofeedback. In today's podcast, I'd really like to focus on the neuro and biofeedback as far as understanding the maps. Now, if you're listening to this, I'm going to do my very best to describe things, but I encourage you to go over to our YouTube channel, and we actually have 2. We have one called Connect My Brain, and there's lots of videos over there. So definitely check that out and see if there's any videos that you want to watch. But the Dr. Laura Hanson channel It has been created in conjunction with all of these podcasts that we've done, I guess, over the last year, and putting all the videos on there and build that particular channel from the platform of the podcast. So we're going to keep both because there's going to be a lot of good information on both. So when you get a chance, go subscribe, share it with a friend. Let's get this information out there because there are so many kids that really need some support. And if we open our eyes to look at, if we understand how they got put together, and that we have incredible tools today to help those systems push in those little domino cubes so that we can push them forward. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on at Connect My Brain, we are a snapshot in time. Now, we'd love for you to stay around and continue with chiropractic care for your entire life or living in Atlanta. But working on your children, it's a program. I have met so many parents over the years that have literally been working on different things with their children since they were very little. And they go from being very little into puberty, into their later teenage years, and the problems were not always resolved. Our goal is to be your last stop. I have a unique skill to look under the rock to figure out what's keeping the connection from really going forward. I want you to be released from always thinking of yourself taking somebody to therapy, or that you have to live with this particular problem. Now, it is about lifestyle. Lifestyle is very important. And I would say of everything that we do, helping people change their diets is probably the hardest thing of all. But I have noticed over the years, people are more open to discussing food and how you put it together. But we definitely don't want you to think that we just do it for this period of time. Everything comes back together and then you can go back to eating anything you want, because that is not the case. So in order to be a great fit, that's what we want to understand. We want to show you what's happened. We want to show you how we're going to put it back. And then we're going to teach you how to keep it going, because things are going to happen in life. And if we don't have skills to put things back, it's where the whole patterns can just literally creep back in. Or perhaps you tried one protocol and didn't clean up everything. And instead of being discouraged, realize that that system may just need more. Or we might be in a situation where we couldn't get a particular product that would definitely change things around. Right now, many of us as providers, especially over the last couple of years, have ran into absolute roadblocks in getting certain things because of the shipping issues, the cost of everything going up, and resources. So it's been a very long process, but we stay hopeful and we keep moving forward, and we begin to accept where we are and how are we going to get to where we want to be. That is more important. So in this particular case that I want to review with you today is a 12-year-old boy where mom says we want to work on some impulse and frustration, and not diagnosed, but suspected some anxiety and some depression. So when I'm looking at the history, which is the blueprint that gives me the background, where are the red flags? And what a few things that are in here that do stand out are there was a fever that was never identified as to origin at 5 weeks. The hands were gray at birth, so we didn't pink up very quickly. We did, but we weren't like that upon arrival. And then there is social struggle from school age on. And when we ask about the diet, we get McDonald's, chicken, meatball, broccoli, crackers, and cheese as a snack. So there's definitely some room for some improvement. And in this particular situation, there is also a lot of eating out, and you can never monitor what is going into food when you are constantly eating out. The other issue that was identified was the weight of the child, exercise, and nutrition. Some highlights from the assessment. So I've talked about this before when we're looking at the interactive metronome for the timing between both sides of the body. And that when we get a number of under 100, that there is a greater accuracy when it comes to the communication. So in this particular situation, the interactive metronome was every single one of them was under 100, significantly more in the 60s and the 50s. So remember, if you haven't heard anything about metronome yet, we're clapping with both sides of our body. There's a bell. We're trying to bring our hands together with the sound of the bell and try to be as close to it for the same time the bell is going off that you're clapping your hands. So we're looking at both hands. We're looking at the cross crawl pattern. So right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot, and then balance. All of those were between 60 and 70. So that is not the issue. So in an earlier podcast, I was talking about where things are in the brain. So for example, the right side of the brain is the more negative. The left side of the brain is the more positive. Now, I don't want you to think your right side of your brain is just about negative. It's about understanding those negative emotions. It's about understanding the positive emotions. And if the timing isn't accurate, that can be one of the reasons as to why there's an imbalance in emotional regulation. So what I thought I would do with you today is really focus on the brain map, because I've never had an opportunity to really focus on that with everybody. I've talked a lot about neurofeedback. But I haven't really shown you a map. So I'm going to share my screen. And for my podcast audience, I'm really going to do my very best to explain this to you. So I'm just going to show a couple of boxes. What we're looking at is pictures. These are called S. Loretta pictures, and they're looking at voxels of where the frequencies are and if they're within range or out of range. So this 13 to 15 is such an important frequency, especially when it comes to the movement of the body. And for the podcast audience, there is actually this white line that bisects another white line that's going to pinpoint exactly where the greatest dysregulation is occurring. And then over to the right, really don't like that they put symptoms of defect, because it's not a defect. It's just a symptom. But I want to give you an idea of what we might find. And the idea behind these maps is not to be this wizard behind the curtain telling you what's going on in your brain, reading your thoughts. That's not it at all. It's about where there might be some dysregulation and how does it match up with what your child is going through. So let's just look at this for example. We have some possibility of dyslexia, and that would be anything that's going to show up greater on that left-hand side. Now, it does happen to be where the two lines bisect on the left. However, I also do a test which is more functional to look at dyslexia than the map alone. So for example, we do a test called lateralization, and we're supposed to be able to dominate one side of our body after we get through a season of development where the lateral columns of function have completed their organization. And so a child somewhere between 3 and 4 is going to start declaring dominance. And that dominance is going to be the eye, the ear, the hand, and the foot. So when I did my test on him to look at that dominance, everything is on the right. Plus, I always do a handwriting sample with every single child because I want to see how you navigate your pencil, because that's a reflex. It's also the pencil grip. And I want to see how you navigate the line across the middle of a page. So there's no backwards letters. There's not a history of backward letters. So some of those traditional ideas that people think of when they think of dyslexia were not there in the mechanical assessment. So this is what I mean. I would not think that that necessarily is going to be an accurate symptom for him. But down below, we've got facial recognition, poor social skills. Maybe that's the part of this particular dysregulation that has to do with what's going on in his brain and how it's going to feed back into him. Now, this is one box. We never take one box of information and begin to say that this is exactly the way it is. You have to put pieces together. That's why I'm putting together what I found in the assessment as well as the map. But I'm also going to take the perception of the parent who knows their child better than anybody, and let's see where all those things happen to overlay one another. We also see difficulty with social cues. So I just find it interesting that this particular box of low beta, frequency of 13 to 15 hertz, which has to do with the somatosensory function of the body, literally movement. And then up here, it talks about the parietal lobe, which is your map. So literally both sides of your head, I'm holding my hands out to the side of my head. That is where your parietal lobe is. Now down at the bottom, this is reflecting the standard deviations. So what they do is they take the recording, it goes through many algorithms, and then they're looking at the age, the gender, and the handedness, and funneling it down to typical. So we're not comparing it to what we're going to call a normal brain, because you just don't do that. This is typical. In this typical age, boys with right-handedness, we would expect a different type of a map. And what's happening here with the standard deviations is that when we look at a bell curve, he's one standard deviation away from typical 100%. And then 2 standard deviations away, 19%. So most situations that in the brain where there might be some dysregulation that we find on the maps, they usually occur within 1 to 2 standard deviations away from what is typical. So, okay. Now this particular map is eyes closed. And I also wanted to bring up alpha. Alpha is a very dominant brainwave. And I think I said he was 12 and he's actually almost 11. So in an 11-year-old, we would expect healthy alpha frequency. So this is 8 to 12 hertz. This is what we call focus calm. We've gone now from the brainstem, which is going to be our slow waves like delta and theta. And now we're coming up more to the midbrain where alpha is. And alpha is then going to project everywhere in the cortex. But look at what is over here. The function of this area: working memory, cognitive flexibility, planning, inhibition, and abstract reasoning. Some of the possible symptoms: executive function, impulsive, anger controlled, depressed, self-esteem, poor social skills. Well, this one almost completely matches exactly what Mom was talking about. So the point of talking about this with you today is to help you understand what's going on up in your brain is feeding back into you. You're not disconnected from this. So wonder if we regulate this brainwave, if we really change those standard deviations, wonder what it's going to do with the child. So in the beginning, we were looking at 63%, one standard deviation away, 33 for 2, 4% for 3. So 3 standard deviations away, that's a pretty strong indicator that we have some dysregulation with alpha. And that's what I find a lot of times with these kids. So another map that I want to reflect with you is what we call a linked ears. So I just find this one so helpful. So this one's going to be a little different than from the color perspective of what you were just looking at. So from the previous report, it was showing if those standard deviations were red and yellow, then it's too much. And that's where his alpha and his low beta were. And we just focused on those 2 bandwidths for right now. But in those boxes, red indicated too much. Blue would indicate too little. But this is a little different. This is about organization. Now, one of the other things that Mom wanted help with was sleep. Okay. And I want to highlight that because I'm hoping that it will be easy to understand as I describe it from this particular report. Now, what this report is reflecting, it's looking at every individual hertz. So 1 to 3 together make up the delta bandwidth. 4 to 7 make up theta. 8 to 12 make up alpha, and 13 to 15 make up low beta, also thought of as sensory motor rhythm. So there is a particular place that each of these bandwidths are supposed to be, or each of these hertz are supposed to be. Delta should be here in the front. So this red that we see in the back over alpha, alpha's in the back, should be here. Now that might sound counterintuitive, but this is your executive function. And so we would also want some beta there too. And yes, beta should be there too. But if we don't have delta there, then as you're trying to go to sleep, you can't ever get beta to shut off. So this is about the organization of the brain, which symptoms that may correlate to not having the proper organization of delta. If a kid has beta all the time, that's going to become anxiety because they don't know what to do with it. So there should be a particular place where these individual hertz should show up. Theta should show up here in the middle. So I'm bringing my cursor. There's a bunch of little heads on a piece of paper. Hopefully you can see the snows if you're seeing the video, but at the top of the circle is representing the front of the brain. So in the middle between the ears is where I should see theta, 4 to 7. So the red, yellows, orange should be here in the middle. We got a little bit migrating of some yellow for 4s and 5s, but not for 6 and 7. Theta, especially for a child, but us too, this is our subconscious, but he is 10.11 in this map. And so it's also your imagination and your creativity. So to me, we don't have enough slow waves where they're supposed to be so he can relax. And then we come down here to alpha, and alpha should be in the back of the brain, but so is everything else. So how can he have focused calm if his brain is battling with slow waves there as well? And then 13 to 15 should also be in the middle, and that 2 is in the back. We don't start getting anything towards the front until we get to be about 18 hertz. So that would be the primary issue I would be looking at for this particular child. And in fact, he did so well with neurofeedback. He went 1 month extra outside of his program with his own personal request that he wanted to continue to do neuro and biofeedback. These kids really do pick up that something is working for them. So this is about midway through his program, and you can see that the red is moving. So he's actually in transition. Things are getting reorganized. And this is why he could feel the difference from this type of a therapy. Neurofeedback is phenomenal in the way that it helps people regulate, reorganize their brain. We teach so many strategies with this. We do have sometimes parents want to just do neurofeedback and not the whole program. I don't find that it works as efficiently as pulling that body into the equation and allowing that body and brain to come together. But that is exactly how we are meant to be wired together. So there's many different things that neurofeedback can address, but especially when it relates to children, we want to make sure that they're in their body, make sure that they're ready for it. But before you know it, I can sit there and ask them a question. Hey, how'd you do today? And after they've been here maybe 10, 15 visits, they'll start telling me, I did well. And I'll go, how do you know? Because I kept the picture really bright. They pick it up so much easier than adults do. It's just marvelous to watch them. So this was a particular case. He went through the entire movement program. He trimmed down. The family got educated on food. They're continuing to follow that same type of protocol. We're going to put a couple of tweaks in there down the road, but it was amazing to watch this young person. I can tell you, I remember having a conversation with him one day. He has amazing questions. He really wants the details. Now, do you remember me telling you what part of the brain really focuses on the details? So it's more of the left side of the brain. But wow, it's great that a child would ask so many questions. But you could also see that in his environment, if there were too many things going on at the same time, it very easily tipped his bucket. Now, in development, we might isolate a training, but regardless, the nervous system is designed to pull it all together. So let's think about the baby just kind of crawling along. You might think that that's one little thing. Well, it's not. It means that reflexes are integrated, like asymmetrical tonic neck reflex. I can get on my hands and on my knees. I can get into my fingertips. I can lift my head up. I can navigate my space. And when you watch them crawl, their arm and leg are in perfect timing. Okay, let's jump forward for a minute. What about riding a bike? How many things do you do when you're riding a bicycle? You're sitting up on top of the seat. You're holding the handle. You're able to steer. You're looking. You're listening. You place your feet on top of the pedals. You are able to dorsiflex and plantar flex your feet, move them up and down. You're able to push through your hips so that you can propel the pedals forward. And you're going fast enough with momentum that you're staying up. So the nervous system is designed. I remember talking to him about this and helping him realize that he required so much specificity in an environment, and he had a very difficult time at first seeing what his reactions. Remember, we were also looking at that anger piece. He had a very difficult time really being able to see what he was doing in that environment because it was more about what everybody else was doing. I think this was part of the greatest change I saw, is that I saw a person become so comfortable with themselves, so comfortable with them in a group, in an environment. In fact, it was really neat over time to watch that he would actually participate and help other children. And that helps us bring social into our environment in more of a real life kind of space. So another child who may have come in later than him, who's still navigating some of those early exercises, having an older child give them some words of encouragement and helping them make a connection. Over time, I see these kids talking to each other, remembering each other's names as they come in and greeting one another. They're coming together in a space that is so safe. They're getting really reconnected back to themselves, and we're helping them get ready to go forward and be everything that they're meant to be. So you can only imagine that I love what I do. I have an incredible passion for children. Many children need our care. They have really gone through a very rough, almost 3 years. I really ask from the bottom of my heart that if you know anybody whose child is suffering, please share this with them. If there's a parent who has been really dysregulated, where you know it's going to impact their child, share this with them. Let's be a community that gets this information out and start to heal our world and get the future ready for the next generation. If you want to reach out, maybe you have a question. Maybe you want to know if Connect My Brain is right for you or your child. On the website, connectmybrain.com, we have a form that you can fill out. Make sure you tell me the times that you are available so that we can actually connect. I'm happy to reach out to you. Right now, we got a little struggle going on with our telephones. We'll be back shortly. I don't want to give out this temporary number because I think it's just going to create confusion. You can always email me directly. My email is drlaura@drlaurahanson.com. drlaura@drlaurahanson.com. Please feel free to reach out. This season, share the gift of help. Maybe you could provide care for someone or an assessment for someone. If you're looking for some wonderful gift ideas, helping a child could be the greatest gift of all. Thank you so much. Enjoy your Christmas, and we'll talk to you soon. Be blessed.